Welcome to this session titled Manufacturing Trends in the Global Economy. And I'll just take a second to introduce myself and the panel, and then we'll proceed. So I'm the moderator. I'm Morris Cohen. I'm a professor of manufacturing logistics at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. And my focus of research, consulting, and application is in the areas of supply chain planning and global sourcing. On the panel, we're joined by Eugenio Marin, who I guess I don't see a picture. Must be.
He's representing us all on the stage.
Okay, that's fine. All right. He's the CEO of the U.S.-Mexico Foundation for Science, which supports cross-border partnerships. We have Xavier Hurtado, Supply Chain Director of FINIA, which is the Aerospace Industry Federation. Then we have Eduardo Salcido, Director at OSUR, a manufacturer of health technology.
Good morning, everyone.
And Olga Vespi, a partner in Procopio, the law firm that deals with IP, patents, areas like medical technology. Okay. So, I guess we're supposed to each share our own screen. Is that correct? Okay, well, let me try that, see how that works. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, so I just have a few slides. So we have the panel here, which I've introduced. And I just want to note a few questions to start things off that we may want to consider that will come up. So here they are. One, what are the opportunities and challenges of globalization of supply chains? Number two, there's been a historical emphasis on efficiency and lean operations. The question is that still appropriate in the current environment, the turbulent environment in which we're all operating? Number three, how are companies enhancing agility and resilience as a response to the current higher levels of risk for disruption? Different strategies, different approaches. So we're going to be interested to hear on that, and both from the panelists and the audience. And number four, how are companies restructuring their supply chain networks? A particular question that's been raised is, are companies moving more towards a regional model as opposed to a sort of a one-size-fits-all supply chain network model? Okay, so those are the questions. And my final slide is there's some issues. I'll just throw them up quickly, which I expect will come up in the discussion. Questions of resilience and agility, which is top of mind in today's supply chain world. A question about how should firms increase cross-border activity under the USMCA agreement. We'll have some discussion. I think some of the panelists will be speaking towards this on the capabilities of the Tijuana region to support such cross-border activities, and a question concerning key regulatory barriers for selling in the US. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'd like to call next on Eduardo Salcido to take the podium.
Perfect. I'll share my screen.
Yeah, please.
Right now. Let's see if that works. And maybe we can do this. And you should be seeing my presentation now.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, very quickly, my name is Eduardo Salcedo. I'm the Director of Operations for OSUR Medical, located here in Tijuana for the last 10 years. It's an Icelandic company devoted to orthopedic devices and biorobotics. We do leg replacement and hand replacement prosthetics, some of the most advanced worldwide, like mind control prosthetics and bionic prosthetics in the replacement of legs. So just as a quick background. In regards to the topic that we have today, I just threw a couple of ideas to food for thought and for maybe fuel our discussions in this panel. We're definitely aware that we're living or going through an abnormal situation right now globally. And the proposal is that we have to rethink a new way of manufacturing, a new way of setting up our supply chain. The rule of sustainable and resilient operations, as you were mentioning a minute ago, Maurice, and the point of views availability, reclaiming its reign over operational convenience and blind cost reduction. You mentioned that lean manufacturing and globalization as the rule. Maybe that's a paradigm that it's very quickly being challenged, at least. Access, capability, and responsiveness are the traits of any successful platform for any project. So what I mean by this is definitely we were considering that cost reduction, cost optimization in lieu of better service was the rule. That doesn't go away, but definitely we need to rethink if nearshoring is something that we would like to think about much more these days. Flexibility of our supply chain with alternate suppliers and alternate supply bases for most of our critical components, and the distribution points for our finished goods, talking about what I know that is manufacturing. If we think about what are the manufacturing trends in the global economy, even before or pre-COVID, there are 10 at least, just to summarize many of them. Artificial intelligence, functional automation, and it's interesting to draw a distinction between what is automation and artificial intelligence. The quickest way of summarizing this difference is automation is the way that we think about to do repetitive work and to try to make more efficient what we know is mechanical, repeatable, reproducible, while artificial intelligence involves trying to mimic or to altogether replace the decision-making process that is being done by a person. Increased focus on sustainability, it goes without saying, particularly these days. Environmental consciousness is gaining ground, and we need to rethink most of our supply chain approach. And things like zero emissions and zero waste, or mitigating our waste in our processes, becomes a thing of trade, of business, not only some fashion or some recent trend. It becomes something that is going to enable. I like to draw a parallel. When ISO standards started a few decades ago to become very popular, they became more than a regulatory tool. They become a commercial tool, because nobody will do business in the world with you if you were not certified. So it kind of following the same situation. Environmental consciousness and sustainability has to become and will become and is becoming like a requirement, even to open up the door or the conversation in regards to business. Customization definitely is something that is not going away. It's something that is a challenge, because on one end, you're trying to standardize all the time. And on the other hand, the global market demands more and more customization, maybe not on a personal or order level, but the family or the segment of business that you're pursuing. Internet of Things goes without saying. They're all connected, because it's going to be very hard for any company to customize their services or their products if they're struggling with having to manage data and information that is not connected to the cloud or to the internet, and is not compatible. So that's going to be something that's going to hinder any company, no matter which size or how strong. Digitalization, just very quickly running through this, refers to enabling all of your data and your knowledge to be part of this Internet of Things that I was talking about. And at the same time, the last one of these points, the cloud-based solutions. But going through the list, strengthen relationships, it's time, particularly these days with the challenges that have been imposed on us with the COVID situation and with the disruption of supply chain. We need to rethink the way that the role of supplier and customer and move more towards partnerships and supplier partnerships, and certification programs are now an integral part of any successful company strategy. And we're thinking, or at least in our company, we're thinking of, I open up completely the ideas that are running through my R&D and what's the future of the company, what are the new products, and I'm willing to reveal that to you, supplier, as long as you open up the doors and show me what technology do you have, and let me walk through your processes and understand to the details what are you capable of doing and what are you not capable of doing, so we can plan ahead and design products that are going to be feasible or you're going to be able to provide us with. So, but that takes some courage and a paradigm that we need to bring down in terms of that openness between customer and supplier. Resiliency and risk management, I'm not gonna elaborate. My colleagues here are gonna for sure elaborate on this. This is the topic of the day. And now we know why these contingency plans that the corporate office always demands of every single operation, whether it's service or manufacturing, are needed. And today it's gonna be taken much more seriously than ever before, because again, for many companies up to this point, having a contingency plan documented on a binder that goes into a drawer that never comes out of there, it was a requirement. Now it's going to be your lifeline, because we know we're talking for real. So I'm guessing that many companies will have to rethink and devote much more effort and depth in these type of strategies. Increase visibility, meaning the more that within your company and outside of your company, you can track and follow the flow of your product, your materials, your communication, and is completely open to the world and to your inner team, is going to be also vital, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to commune with the Internet of Things and digitalization, and at the same time with the cloud-based solutions that are going to be enabling you to be everywhere, all the time, anyone in your company to be able to provide answers. And circular supply chain, just to finish off the list, refers that we will always be thinking of, or in the past, of a linear concept when it comes to the supply chain. You buy raw materials, you transport them, you package them, you send them to the distribution center, and off it goes to the customer. But now the circular supply chain has to become the rule. What are you doing with the product that is out in the field, that it's returned, the raw material that you can maybe use, even though it has gone through one cycle? Things like that have to be planned ahead for, and not a consequence of just chance or adapting to whatever comes up. It has to be well thought up strategy, documented and established in every single company, but we can elaborate on that later on.
Okay, Eduardo, I'll ask you to finish up in the interest of time.
Rounding up things, I'm not going to elaborate on this one. I guess this presentation will be available, but I'm just pointing out the very obvious advantages of Cali-Baja region over many other regions within Mexico, and not even to mention the world. So we'll talk about that. Thanks a lot for the time.
Okay, great. So if you can stop sharing, and I'm going to call on Eugenio Maran to take the podium.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Cohen.
Great. We can see
Okay,
it.
so as you know, amplifying a little bit on what Eduardo just mentioned, there's a bunch of regulations, a bunch of opportunities, bunch of strategies that manufacturing and our border region has to take into account in order to get a real advantage. As if we want to build this as a manufacturing hub in the world. Well, let me just talk a little bit about our organization. The U.S.-Mexico Foundation for Science is a nonprofit NGO that was created almost 30 years ago. And our mission is to foster binational collaboration and competitiveness by using science and technology to solve problems and take advantage of opportunities as well for economic and social development based on innovation. But our vision truly is to contribute in turning the US and Mexico into the most inclusive, competitive, and sustainable region in the world. How we're doing this, we're focusing our programs in supporting entrepreneurs and SMEs in both sides of the border, Mexican SMEs and American SMEs, to really join forces into tapping into these opportunities. So we're focusing on agro-industry, advanced manufacturing, automotive, aerospace, Industry 4.0, health, etc. And IT, of course, it's a very important one. We have served over 5,000 SMEs through our national and international acceleration programs, over 1,300 small producers, and over 1,000 entrepreneurs in growth support programs. And we have used and convened over $180 million of public and private resources, along with this, allocating this into our programs. So if you go to the next one, please. What we have here is we started in terms of the manufacturing industry. And this was something that yesterday, and if you recall in the panel, Tom Derry said GM is selling more vehicles to China than they are doing in the US. So the game is not decoupling from China, but it's strengthening regional companies to cope with resilience in the supply chains. So increasing the value-added capabilities and readiness and compliance under the USMCA, taking advantage of the USMCA as a tool. And this is very important, not to see the USMCA as a cover regulator instead of an enabler. I think this is very important. And for that, what we're doing starting this year, but based on a lot of work previously done by the foundation and other organizations, is that we are putting together this manufacturing reshoring program that is supported by the Economic Development Administration of the US. And we're starting from information that we had in the past of this map of over close to 800 operations in the cross-border area of Mexico and the US. In all the regions, you can see their operations in automotive, electronics, aerospace, medical devices, etc. And this is very important because out of the 100-day supply chain assessment of the Biden-Harris administration, they put out some of the right issues that we have to pursue in order to make North America more resilient and a truly manufacturing hub. So, and this resonates as well with the recently announced of the high-level economic dialogue reinstalled in between Mexico and the US. So we're taking advantage of those two macroeconomic tools, the USMCA and the HLED, in order to bring a reshoring strategy in terms of analyzing data, very, very focused on Porter and Stern and Delgado's methodology in Harvard in order to analyze the macroeconomic impact of the supply chains, all the way down to the products, where the gaps are, but more importantly, what we should do about it in order to benefit investment flows, in order to benefit particular supply chain strategies in a particular product or operation. And that is going to bring into light some information, valuable information, in order to strengthen the strategies of the companies in both sides of the border. And our mission with this is to provide SMEs with the right information and the right timing on how to set up joint ventures and collaboration with American companies, Mexican and American companies, in order to take advantage and be ready for the large OEMs and tier ones of the different industries to really have a value proposition in order to relocate and bring back operations to North America. This is not an easy task. This is a tremendous amount of work, and we're starting with the Texas region. For that, we partner with McAllen EDC. We partner with the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and we partner with it as well with the iDream DoD strategy of the UTRGV. And with those as a consortium, we are putting together this strategy starting in the South Texas region and north part of Mexico to really have examples of how this could be done. And just if you go to the next one, please, I'll finish with this, my comments. This is very important. We are seeing opportunities not only in all the parts of the supply chain process, but as well as focusing on particular opportunities. And yesterday we were fed from all the panels with information about those sectors, but I'm just recalling them today: computers and electronics, military equipment, appliances, manufacturing machinery, metal fabrication, transport goods like aerospace and automotive components, molds and dies and tooling, pharmaceutical and medical devices just are the big chunk of the particular sectors that are bringing back or analyzing how to bring back some of these operations, not only in terms of the logistic problematic of the pandemic, but as well in terms of competitiveness. And this is very important because yesterday it was stated as well that it's not the taking advantage of the Mexican opportunity of its low cost labor, because we're not just that. It's it's an angle of total cost of ownership. It's taking into account all the costs associated with producing a component or producing a product that can be more regionally integrated in a more complete and faster way. So that's the important deal when analyzing which particular opportunities are out there. For example, one that is very difficult to one particular niche that is difficult to look at these strategies, textiles and particular garments, because simply it doesn't match. The numbers doesn't fit. When you do really run the numbers, you can really see that Taiwan or Vietnam are more competitive, even though you're producing locally, because of the use of all machinery or very low cost in power, but as well very low cost in labor. So when you add up all those things and you bring back the analysis to do it regionally, it doesn't match up. So this is important for our discussion today in this panel. So just wanted for you to have like a big scope of what are the opportunities out there and how we're dealing with them. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Gino. Xavier, do you have a deck or not? Okay, we'll call on you next.
Okay, and since I know we are on a tight schedule, I'm going to try to be really fast. Please let me know if you can see my screen now.
Yeah, we can see it.
I believe you can see it. Okay, so I'm going to be very brief for those of you who are not familiar with the Mexican Federation of the Airspace Industry. We gather, like I'm going to say, 80% of the airspace exports of the country. We have more than 120 members. But the most important thing is we have the demand. And this is a slide that shows all the members that we have, in which you can see a whole variety between OEMs, tiers 1, and tiers all the way to tier 4, like raw materials and heat treatment and so on. So basically, since our membership has a very strong depth into the airspace industry, we have a lot of challenges and challenges and opportunities, I'm going to say. First thing, obviously, everybody wants to know what happened after COVID-19. And this report was released by Oliver Wyman, which is a very reputable firm in the aerospace industry. And over here, what we can see is the trends for the next decade, that actually all the way up to 2031. And basically, this to show that the assembly of aircraft is going to go up. Over here in the top bottom, we can see the recovery lines by each type of program. So we definitely see a recovery coming over. And on the right side, we can see with the specific type of aircraft. So the good news is we're getting back on track. When we talk to companies like Boeing, Airbus, obviously each program has its own recovery lines, but the demand is going up. Now, obviously, there's lots of lessons learned. And on the MRO side, we had a lot of parked aircraft. We had a lot of airlines that were hurt by COVID-19. But right now, as soon as vaccination keeps on going up in every country, hopefully traveling starts happening again. And once that happens, all of the aircraft that have been parked for over a year will have to prove their airworthiness. And that means that they need to go into an MRO. So over here, this slide shows the opportunities for the MROs and the maintenance. So this is, I'm going to say, at a broad level, at an OEM and MRO level. Now, what happens in reality right now is this thing, and it's part of the panel discussion that we've been having, is definitely we're going to go to regional value chains. In the past, everything used to be global. But then COVID-19, when China was shut down, it made a big impact in a lot of value chains, and a lot of my buyers basically regretted not having a dual source developed in Mexico. So what happens now is that I'm going to say that sometimes when I hear about different regions, we tend to compete or tend to have the competitiveness level and say we are better, we are more cost effective, and the reality is we need to be regional. I still recall that there was a country that said, Malaysia, they said you need to focus on the 3M. And the 3Ms are, if you're going to cater the North American market, you need to be in Mexico. If you're going to cater Europe, you need to be in Morocco. And if you need to be in Asia, you need to be in Malaysia. So regardless of the country, what it means is regional value chains. And part of the game that obviously our buyers are trying to strengthen right now. Now, obviously, when we talk about opportunities, we also need to talk about challenges. This treaty was signed this year, and basically it's all Southeast Asia except for India. And basically, those are the implications that they're trying to consider where it comes to investment, competition, telecommunications, IP, e-commerce. But if you see the numbers over here in this portion, they're comparing the three most important economic blocks, where it is the USMCA, the European Community, and this new treaty of Southeast Asia. And when you see the numbers, right now, Asia, without counting India, it's more than 3 million above, more than $3 trillion above than the USMCA, number one. And number two, it's 4.5 times as much consumers. Now, why is this important? We need to pay attention as to what's happening in that market, because obviously, if we're going to be competing for one component or another, this might be a big threat. Now, what we need to also understand is that this might be a threat, but where are the opportunities? And we see 4 avenues bringing opportunities for Mexico. Number one, obviously, we had the USMCA that was renegotiated last year. And actually, because of this, that there's going to be some sort of a regional import substitution strategy that is worth in more than $30 billion if we pursue it. So it's a very good opportunity for manufacturing operations in this side of the planet. And I'm not talking only about aerospace. This is also automotive or all the industries we've been discussing, like even medical devices. Then we have the second area, which is a single source in Asia. All of those a single source in China or 19, and after all the logistics problem we're having right now, what developed, so it's a second, and this is a very important. This is on the US 2007 to 2020, we had a gap of 500,000 technicians and engineers. That was what was missing. Just to compare to Mexico, the automotive industry is the industry that is the largest employer in our country. This would account to almost like 45% of the employees of the automotive industry. So it's a huge gap that they have on the east side. And what happened is that this is the second point. More than half of the technicians and engineers are 55 or above retirement age of 60. That we have challenge. Go to the
Javier, you're breaking up a little bit. It's hard to hear you.
They
Can't hear you.
right now.
No.
So, and the third thing over here is
Okay. Did we lose Xavier? I think we did. Okay, maybe he will rejoin. Let's turn to Noel to make a final presentation, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A and questions amongst the panelists and with the audience. So Noel, you're on.
Okay, thank you. So I'm Noel Gillespie. I'm with Procopio, as Morris said, and I'm a partner in our intellectual property group, as well as the co-chair of Procopio's Life Science and MedTech Practice Group. So Procopio is a full-service law firm, mainly regional offices up and down the West Coast. And as a full-service firm, you know, on the border, primarily based in San Diego, we actually deal with a lot of international clients that are doing cross-border activity. So some of the things that we handle for those clients are formation, often in multiple regions. So entities in the US, entities in Mexico and Latin America, Asia, maybe even Europe. And, you know, setting those entities up, we deal with the tax issues along with the formation issues, licensing, manufacturing agreements, intellectual property. Of course, we manage that globally for a lot of our clients that have global markets. Some of the things I wanted to highlight that we deal with products coming into the U.S. Are these listed here, and I think we see these more and more as Morris, you know, kind of raised the question: what are the opportunities and challenges? I think one of those opportunities is trying to add value at the manufacturing kind of step to the products that are being you know, shipped into the U.S. in this example. And one of the ways that that's happening, as I think Eduardo in his list of trends pointed out, you know, there's a lot of digitization. We're basically making these products, whether they're medical device or other products, smarter. So there's kind of that digitization, Internet of Things. You know, we're putting processors in more and more devices. We see this a lot with medical devices in particular. You know, so you've got AI and ML and you know, these smart devices typically are connecting to something in the cloud and pushing data up there. And so as that happens, it raises a lot of issues. One of them is data privacy. So if that's data that's getting, you know, collected and pushed up to the cloud is related to consumer information, it can raise a lot of data privacy issues, especially in the kind of med tech. You know, if it's a medical device or a medical app or wellness app, the data privacy rules, you know, need to be kind of understood and accounted for at the product developing and manufacturing level. And those are mainly state, you know, those mainly go state by state. There's regulatory issues, especially for the medical devices. So the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, which approves medical devices for sale in the US, is really trying to get on top of these issues. So they've got initiatives around software in a medical device, software as a medical device. They're trying to look at what do you do with, AI and ML, because by its very nature, it changes over time. And when you have a medical device under the normal FDA kind of framework, if it changes, it's got to be approved again. So how do you kind of deal with that? Kind of playing, hand in hand with these data privacy issues. The Office of Civil Rights is very concerned. That's a federal level about what, if it's gathering data, what's happening with that data. I mentioned there was state level. A lot of that's primarily state level. There's always been HIPAA, which is basically data privacy, but for hospitals and insurers, practitioners, in relation to the patient health information that they, invariably have. So HIPAA is a framework that regulates that, but you can have overriding or overlapping issues with data privacy as well. Reimbursement is an issue. For medical devices, it's the U.S. can be a very unique kind of market to sell into. Reimbursement relates to what Medicare, Medicaid, the government will pay for services, and you have to get a code. But even if you think your business model is not to be dependent on Medicare and Medicaid, but to have the client, a patient pay for it without a reimbursement code, in practice it's very difficult to build a business model. There are export-import control issues. We are seeing more activity there under the previous administration in its stance and some of the policies and things it was doing vis-a-vis China. It's become very important to understand, what technologies you can and cannot import or export to various areas. So that does play a role, I think, in answering this question on kind of, should we be a regional supply chain or something else? In part, I think, even pre-COVID, there were some trends towards maybe, at least for, North America, being more regional. This is also raised by this issue of kind of IoT and cloud. Where you're sending the data. The data is being gathered here in the US, but sent, for example, to servers in China, that can create an issue. So you have to understand these kind of import, export, and other kind of regulatory and legal issues around what technology you can export and what, where is this data being sent? Where is it being routed? Where is it being stored? This overlaps a little bit with the intellectual property issue. So a lot of the time our clients want to, seek patent protection in multiple regions. But if you go to file a patent application in Mexico or China, for example, that's actually considered exporting technology. So you got to get an export license, and you have to understand those export rules. Even if you're just discussing maybe a collaboration over the manufacturing of some technology, can you have those discussions? Where can you have those discussions? What kind of clearance do you have to have? So we are dealing with the import-export issues quite a bit. Intellectual property issues, like I said, and I mentioned, in the U.S., kind of selling to hospitals is, it's not really a regulatory issue, but just, how you sell to them. Can you sell to them? There's, anti-kickback and other rules that laws that you got to comply with respect to how and who you partner with when selling to hospitals. And like I mentioned, those reimbursement codes for medical devices are very important. So those are some of the things that we're dealing with as we, these trends that, for example, Eduardo highlighted are impacting kind of, the supply chains and the products being delivered into the United States.
Okay.
And let me.
That'd be great. Thank you, Noel. I think what I'd like to suggest now is let's take a little time if any of the panelists want to pose any questions to any of the other panelists. It's an opportunity to do so. And I'm not sure how we're equipped for Q&A from the audience. I assume that's going to be handled.
Perhaps one of the questions that I would like to ask, and this would be an open question to whoever wants to pick it up. I broke up, my broadband went down, but I was going to close on one of the strategies that we foresee right now on the binational community is to actually go for M&As where we start doing joint venture partnerships between U.S. and Mexican companies. One of the challenges that we have on the U.S. side is that companies are retiring, and on the Mexico side, we don't have the complexity level that we need to actually go and pursue those opportunities that we see ahead of us. So the key question over here would be is, are you seeing the same opportunity that we envision? Like if we were to pursue, whether it is like any type of M&A, whether it is a merger or an acquisition, and if so, how should we address it? Because we are on a binational community, so how should we join forces to actually pursue and leverage on these opportunities that we have ahead of us?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Is the cross-border activity that you're trying to be promoting being driven by M&A, or is it companies investing in their own branches in different countries? If others have any perspective on that.
Yeah, I think
Well,
I can take that, Javier. I think that you and I have been seeing this trend in the aerospace industry, but it's happening in other sectors as well. Yesterday, Foxconn just stated that their competitors are in Malaysia and in Vietnam, and not only outside competitors, but their own plants. Multinationals like Foxconn, they have a tremendous broader operations everywhere in the world, and in between them, those regions, those plants are competing each other to gain contracts. Mm-hmm. So how they come about bringing those contracts to that region is to supporting and having the business cases in place. Those business cases, you cannot build them just saying we have the machine and we have the technology and the people to do it.
Right.
Is analyzing the whole thing in terms of total cost of ownership and in terms of regional development. So going back to your question, Javier, I think that this is very important for not only the OEMs and the key larger companies. It's important as well for SMEs because in the binational region, Mexico and the US, there are, for example, very similarities in SMEs. There are American companies that cannot get into the supply value added chain because they're not ready, or because they do not comply with the top end regulations, or because they do not have the talent pool needed. And then if you go to Mexico, you have the talent pool, you have a very specialized people, but you don't have the capital access to buy machinery, to comply with the regulations as well. So what we need is to boost capabilities on those SMEs and work together, joint forces for really have the volumes, the specialties, and the timeless, the time capability of those companies, the readiness in time. This is very important because sometimes the companies, what they say is, we're looking for a supplier or a network of suppliers that can take care of this. And you can say, okay, I can take care of 80% of this. Well, you're not ready. That's it. And it doesn't make sense for the large company to bring a contract because you can jeopardize their operation. So what we need to do is to help the SMEs to be ready as fast as possible, but collaborating with other companies that probably have your, if you don't have in the an American SME doesn't have the talent pool, the Mexican company does have it, but the Mexican company probably doesn't have the capital access, what the American SME should have it. So those types of joint ventures are the most successful ones that we're looking at, and that we have examples of that particular strategy working out to strengthen the supply chain. Javier.
Okay.
Just to add a couple of words to that, if
Yeah, go ahead.
definitely the situation that we're going through, it's given us the best opportunity ever to try to move to a regional supply chain. And I agree that it poses that challenge that you want to do it, the corporate headquarters want to do it, but you don't find the size or the capability of supplier that you need. But at least in our case, and I think many in the medical device industry, I was talking about point of use availability. That has been the norm in a manufacturing operation, but now we can extrapolate that to your worldwide supply chain. Now more than ever, point of use availability, meaning you have access to your materials, your sourcing your materials, your capabilities and your services as close to the assembly point or the transformation point that you have. And currently, transformation point for most parties is the Cali Baja region. So that's giving us the opportunity. What the mandate right now is that we need to have a flexible supply chain. If we need to invest capital in a local supplier, and we have done so, to develop them and start to steer some of our volume, even if it's a 15% of our volume towards that supplier, to start developing and having that flexibility that tomorrow or 2 years from now, when a similar tragic situation like the one we're going through arises, then we're going to have the capability to switch another 20%, another 40%, in the best scenario, maybe 80% of our manufacturing requirement or demand to that local supplier that by now has that capability. But it starts with a commitment that implies investing in our case, we have put complete production lines owned by us in a local supplier here in Tijuana to manufacture our goods. And I think we're not the only.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have a kind of a question perhaps related to the M&A. We've heard a lot of talk about reshoring. There are other kinds of shorings that people talk about, nearshoring and offshoring. And what that really is talking about then is when we talk about companies coming together to form partnerships to work in this region, is it a question of US or Mexican companies coming home to where their home is? That's reshoring. Is it nearshoring? Companies are looking to, let's say, locate in Mexico because of the access to the US North American market? Or is it other sources, European, Asian companies that are coming to this region to invest in? What's your sense on where the dominant drive is these days? Is it US companies coming home? Is it companies looking to be near to the market? Or are they coming from even more distant locations?
I'm going to say that all of the above. And I'm going to add one additional option. We had manufacturing plants that are shutting down their operations in China. They're coming back, but this is not the traditional reshoring model, because they're taking like 80% of what they used to manufacture themselves in China, and they want to transfer it to suppliers in Mexico. So it's a different model, because they're not reshoring the operation; they're reshoring the production, but they're not coming back themselves. So it's an additional to all the options that you mentioned.
Yeah, they're outsourcing as well as reshoring. Yeah.
Right. But all of the above. And I believe Eugenio was going to say something else.
Sure. No, I think I agree with you, Javier. Reshoring has to do with, of course, old North American manufacturing that flew out to China 20 years ago. Right. Some of those could be coming back, and that is part of reshoring. And reshoring has been happening from 10 years from now. I mean, is that now it is steep up with the pandemic, the real troubles that you can get into when you don't have the logistics in place and the timely, the just-in-time products in place to your customers. But it has been happening. But now nearshoring, and it's just a matter of partnering with countries that are very close geographically that can provide support to that strategy of reshoring. So I think it's all of the above, as you said, Javier, as well, but as well, and not only Chinese or Asian companies bringing investments to this region to operate new opportunities, but as well other parts of the world. This opens up opportunities for other manufacturing operations to pursue the opportunities of bringing that to these binational regions in Mexico and the US that could take leverage in competitiveness and access to a more strategic way of producing the product. So I think all of that and as an integrated strategy is part of the reshoring word that now is in vogue and in all aspects.
Now, one aspect that I would like to add is sometimes we think like it's an either or, either you are in Asia or in Mexico, and for most of the cases, I believe it's going to be both.
Sure.
Like going back to the original concept, whoever wants to sell in Asia, and Asia it's a growing market, then they need to be somewhere in Southeast Asia. And
well,
for the operations.
I can take a little bit on that because not for it's not important just to see this as an economic trend, but as a real impactful strategy for all the actors and shareholders in the supply chains. I think I picked up yesterday from all the manufacturing related industries that were presenting, I picked up a couple of things that are very important. Talent development is super critical across the industries, but we need to prepare this talent with cross-industry experience. And this is very important because, for example, very specialized manufacturing talent, engineering, technicians, etc. I mean, they have to find opportunities out there, but we don't have to, make them compete in between or among themselves, because sometimes that's what happens when a region is very successful in bringing investment from operations or companies. What they start lacking is the talent and the access to that talent, and then that talent starts to increase their prices, and they start, going to one company to another company, and it creates a tremendous problem. So we need to create this resilience in the talent pool as well. To have a long-term country strategy is very important. And that's something we are a little bit, behind in Mexico. With this administration it's a matter of how to navigate with the 27 presidential strategies and how to take advantage of one or two of those to our own strategies as well. So moving up to sophisticated manufactured products is as well a very important one. And
any part of Mexico will have
to see Mexico as a not as a low-cost labor country, but as a competitive innovation ecosystem. And this is very important to transform that in everybody else's mind is not an easy task. And to have a high level of automation and technology adoption, and as well as simplify component and software designed for multitask functionality and flexibility. That was because of all this semiconductor discussion that we had yesterday. This is very important as well, because as long as the manufacturing companies become more digital, they're going to need to comply with other regulations on top of their own industry regulations. That's the data access, data validation, because, for example, in aerospace, the aerospace sector is heavily regulated, airworthiness and, export controls, et cetera. So to design for example, a military component or a commercial component for an aircraft and put that design on the cloud, that's simply not going to happen.
Right.
So we need to
Let me turn to
understand
Eduardo
what
just a minute,
parts
okay?
of the process, maybe it's not the design, but it could be the manufacturing information that you can store in a private cloud and then start moving up that to the supply chain. So the
Right.
adoption of I 4.0 technologies in the manufacturing industry is a must. If we need to go digital or die
Okay.
in the process. And this is something that, if big companies are having trouble to do it, imagine the SMEs.
Okay,
So
let me call on
This
some of
is
the
very
other
important, and
panelists
we're
to comment on
helping,
that, okay?
we're trying to push SMEs
Gentlemen?
into that direction because that's the only way we see they're going to be able to connect to the value-added chains in the future. And I think that we are back again with all of you.
Okay, yes. Did Noel or did other panelists want to say something? Do we have any comments from the audience? Do we have the capability for people from the audience to ask questions? I don't know if anyone wants to.
Yes, we do.
Hello, everybody. Juan Diaz from CETIS one more time. Eugenio, I believe you answered this question in part in your comments. I just wanted to comment that the school has, I believe, a solid engineering program. We have students involved in projects regarding the manufacturing, BSM, software development. And I just want to ask all the speakers, what should be aligned with the trends that you're mentioning, the soft or hard skills that future professionals or newly graduated professionals should have or be developing?
Oh, great question. Who wants to field that question?
I just can comment very quickly. Definitely a very, very important point. I think that I don't have to think about it. I would say the ability to transfer processes in a structure in a regulatory-wise way into Mexico or into any country. There's a need to do that, and particularly in this type of situation, we've been talking about relocating, nearshoring, bringing back home, flexible supply chain. All of that requires a ton of engineers that are very proficient in knowing how to transfer from one point A to point B, a whole process with regulatory compliance, with optimization of processes, with efficiency, and not disrupting the service levels, by the way. So if you can graduate somebody that can provide that from the get-go, I'm, as the director of OSHA, assure you that he has a job here.
Right.
So that could be the way to sum it up.
I would like
to
to
amplify on what Eduardo just said.
Yeah.
If some of you were here at the Fuck Up Nights, there was a very interesting comment about saying, well, we have to do this to be ready. For example, preparing all those engineers to have manufacturing operations back. It's not a bubble like the software guy and this Walter Weiss was explaining us. He created a bubble in terms of expectation. No, this is real demand. I mean, the $30 billion, $50 billion that Javier was talking about is a real demand of fabricating and manufacturing aircrafts. Over 36,000 aircrafts are needed in the following 10 years, and the supply chains cannot build them as they are today. So those are real demand. So based on the market, we can produce a strategy to see how many engineers and technicians and experts in every single part of the value chain are needed. And education, the education institutions have a clear roadmap to follow in that direction. So I think we have a lot of work But a good opportunity is that we are coping that with the market demand, not creating a bubble of just training people because of the training process, and that's it.
Perhaps I would like to add
No, go ahead. Yeah.
just a brief comment. And this very brief comment would be a challenge that I see for the next generation of technicians, engineers. I'm going to say they have two challenges. Number one, they need to go learn from the technicians that are going to retire from the US side. So if there would be an exchange program, it'd be great. Let's go learn from companies in California. You're guys next to each other. Number one. And number two, it'd be like to learning about the new technologies and the new challenges that are coming aboard. Like for example, in our meetings with Airbus, with Boeing, one of the main challenges right now is to reduce the weight of the aircraft and make them more fuel efficient and go to a zero emission culture. That means a lot of innovation. That there's going to be a lot of additive manufacturing coming on board, which was not in the past. So the challenge of this new technicians and engineers is going to be how to bring the best of both worlds. The complexity that we have from the previous generations that has not been documented, in addition to the challenges that we have right now, materials wise and engineering wise, and then changing also to additive manufacturing and IoT and all of the things that were not in the past. So that's part of the challenge that we have for the new generations, I believe.
Okay, thank you, Zevi. Any other comment responses from the panel? Other questions from the audience? Any volunteers? Okay, I have a question. One of the things that's been mentioned is resiliency. In today's environment, every company, every senior manager is talking about resiliency, which can be defined in different ways, but I like to define it as the ability of an organization or a company to respond to disruptions or changes or opportunities, and to do so in a way that involves strategic changes, restructuring, redesign of the supply chain. The traditional focus, the driver of a lot of these reshoring and nearshoring decisions that we've been discussing just now have been driven by efficiency, by cost reduction. And now we're starting to see that perhaps there's been too much emphasis on efficiency, and we should start putting more emphasis on resiliency, the ability to adapt and to respond. My question is, how does that affect this region? Is this region particularly well positioned to provide resiliency or efficiency or both? So I open it up to the panel.
Definitely, it's going to be both.
Dr. Cohen, I can just mention that this region has a terrific position in the supply chains, because not only the history between Tijuana and San Diego evolution, but as well as industries that are pursuing constantly with innovation. I mean, that particular mindset that was set years ago is positioning this particular region as an opportunity to take advantage as a resilient model for other regions across the border in Mexico-US border. Because we have like six border states in Mexico, 4 border states in the US. And there are other regions that are valuable to this strategy. But this particular one has everything to have a gain in the resilience strategy. But I come again to my previous comment. Total cost of ownership. This is very important. Don't throw it to the trash. You know, we have to use it as a tool to increase OEM's time to market. It is a tool that we need to use to reduce lead times and the speed up integration of SMEs into the local supply chains. This is very important because that's the only way to really bring a business model and a competitive way to bring contracts to the regions. So it's not cheap labor, it's not low labor. Forget about it. What happened to China? 20 years after, low labor, and it's, it's competing, and the labor went up, and it's, you can find the most incredible high-end products in China, manufactured in China, but as well, there are the same costs as everywhere because they're using the same machinery, they're using the same access to power, probably they have subsidies, they are using other tools like in the aerospace sector, the offsets, but in the end, we have to take we have to do an analysis in the overall cost, because otherwise we cannot compete to other regions if we based our analysis only in labor. That's no the game. Okay, think.
The question I have is: do you think that companies historically have put too much emphasis on efficiency and cost, and as a result, they've suffered in the current crisis and disruptions of not being able to be resilient? I wonder if anyone have seen that in examples.
The answer is going to be definitely yes. There's going to be a lot of, there were a lot of companies that went even bankrupt for having that style of management, let's call it.
Right.
And resiliency, sometimes I believe it's confused with survival. And this is not about surviving. This is about having very solid value chains. And if we follow certain patterns, and we don't think necessarily about only the cost, but also about the value of what we can bring on board. We can put some game changers on the board. And perhaps over here, there's an example that I like to give.
Right.
There was a company that used to recycle boats. And when I say boats, it's like the very large boats.
Okay.
And he wanted to buy another boat for recycling. And the owner of the boat didn't want to sell it. And he said, I'll buy your company include, and that type of mindset. Sometimes we don't have it. So if we want to be very resilient, it'd be like, okay, how can we own the full value chain and not just be cost competitive as far as labor wise goes, or as far as the cost of energy? And if we were to put those game changers in the game, then perhaps we have a very good game ahead of us.
Other comments?
I would add just that resiliency is by nature a byproduct. You cannot pursue it directly. It's the consequence of optimizing and thinking long-term in all of the areas that comprise your business.
Right.
You can lean yourself to bankruptcy, as you were pointing out, for sure. And today we are more conscious of that than ever before because of this global situation that we're facing. Yeah, I like to draw a parallel to the manufacturing of vaccines. You found yourself all of a sudden manufacturing your vaccines in India, in South Africa, in Eastern Europe, but you needed them home. And when a situation like this arises, the federal government takes precedence over the private industry contracts and all of that. And they can say, well, yes. So let's draw a parallel in that to our microcosm of a manufacturing operation or business. And you need to start thinking in those terms. Resiliency, by definition, is the ability to thrive in the most challenging conditions. You're gonna keep thriving, even though the overall situation has turned against you. And again, it's a byproduct. The more that you digitalize your processes, the more that you provide transparency and visibility in every step of your supply chain or your manufacturing process or business process, the more resilient you're going to end up being.
Cool. Other comments on that? You mentioned, is it about survival? The two metrics that I use in my work when we develop software to help companies plan for resiliency is the time to survive, how long will I survive, and also how long will it take to recover. So you have incidents that occur, I run out of inventory, I don't have the parts, I don't have the labor, how long can I survive? And then how long can I get back to where I was before? So those are very important. I think we still have a few more minutes. Any final comments? I think this has been very interesting discussion. We've we've covered a lot of different ground. We've covered different strategies, had an opportunity to learn about how this particular region can be a major player in dealing with these cross-border situations. So
Perhaps I would say that as a closing thought on my side, there was a phrase that I like a lot that says, you cannot make money in the past. And what that means is that in order to succeed this decade, it's going to be a different paradigms we're going to be facing. It's new technology, it's new and new markets. I mean, on the US side, what used to work over the past decades, it's not going to work this decade anymore. And so we have a challenge ahead of us. Once again, technology-wise, even how finances are handled, how the manufacturing process, like if we replace it with additive manufacturing, there's going to be a lot of components that we're not going to be manufacturing the way it used to be before. And then we have the Amazon logistics. I'm not talking about the online part, but the logistics model. If we put additive manufacturing behind it, there's a whole avenue that we could pursue for all industries behind the Amazon model. And what that means is that we need to learn, and this is not like relearn, this is learn a new avenue that was not there before. So once again, my closing thought would be, you cannot make money in the past. Let's focus on the future. Let's learn about the new technology, and let's adapt to what's coming ahead of us.
I think that's a great closing comment. Any other final thoughts from the panelists before we close?
Sure, Dr. Cohen. I'll take a lead on that. Just my comment would be, we are in a particular cross-border time that is super full of opportunities. And we have to take advantage of that. You know, in terms of our work, pushing SMEs, both sides of the border to collaborate is something that we need to keep ongoing. I think that, you know, advantages of American SMEs, they're super good in the commercial strategies, but they're lacking, you know, cost effectiveness. They're lacking technical talent pool. That's something the Mexican SMEs have, and the Mexican SMEs the Mexican SMEs are lacking some commercial strategies. They are struggling with how to cope with even their own, you know, proposals, their commercial proposals, the RFQs, the RFPs, etc. And access to capital, to smart capital, smart money. And that's something they can do with partners in the US side. So I think we are in a very interesting moment to keep pushing on that direction in how to bring together more companies in both sides of the border to take advantage of those opportunities out there and bring contracts to these regions and in US and Mexico. I think those are my final remarks.
Great. Any other final thoughts?
Final remarks, the Cali-Baja region's key competitive advantages to cope with the global challenge that we are being faced with is we have a recognized case study for cross-border trade collaboration. We have a wealth of know-how in technology and high-end technical talent available. Worldwide, unparalleled convergence of diverse foreign investment that we talked about. We have the most advanced conglomerates of med device and aerospace, at least, not to mention electronics, in the Cali-Baja region, in all of Mexico and the US. And an unrivaled geographical advantage that is being emphasized these days with the situation that we're going through. If you're selling goods to the US, for instance, it's a no-brainer. You have to be in Mexico, in the US, and in the Cali-Baja region among all of that. So enough said, borderless business Congress is focused on that. So we have the upper hand.
Noel, do you have any final comments? Everyone's been optimistic. What about the regulatory environment? Are you optimistic about that?
I think it's you need to understand what some of those issues are. since the U.S. is kind of the biggest market for, where these products are landing. And especially as they get smarter and more of that intelligence is being incorporated in the manufacturing process, just understanding what those barriers are. But I'm optimistic. I mean, we see our clients, we operate, throughout Mexico in particular, Latin America, with cross-border clients. We actually employ, I think we have at least 8 Mexican lawyers that work with us up here because we have so many clients throughout Mexico that are doing these joint ventures and these partnerships across the border. So I think we're very bullish on it. We're positive, for the region. And like we mentioned, I think there are, pushed by the pandemic, a confluence of things that make a lot more sense to be regional. If this is where your main kind of market is to kind of be regional. So,
okay. Well, let me thank all the panelists for your insightful comments. It was fascinating to hear from all of you. And I personally enjoyed it. And I'd like to again thank the organizers as well. So I guess with that, we'll conclude. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much to our moderator and participants. We're going to call up Carlos Higuera, Adriana Guía, Fidel Gutierrez, Cristina Hermosillo, and Carlos Loyola to recognize our panelists.
Okay. Well, thank you. Very nice.
All right. Well, just very quick comments. We appreciate the participation of everybody. We know that you are all very big promoters of the region. We appreciate the work that you have done throughout the years, and the insights that you gave in this conference has been very, very valuable for everybody that has been participating. So we really appreciate all of your insights, the work that you do, and we will continue to work together for the region. So thank you very much again.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank
Logging
you
off.
all very much. Oh, I'm sorry, Doctor.
Okay, should we log off now?
No, not yet, Doctor. Were you going to say something?
No, I'm not. I've said it.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for participating. We're going to take a short break. I think you guys still on for pictures. We're going to take a short break and come back to our next conference and a short talk from Megatronic.